Hi there, this is Elise Bennin, your marketing mentor. And this is the podcast for you if and only if you are ready to leave the feast or famine syndrome behind, and I mean for good. This year on the Marketing Mentor podcast, I'm sharing more behind the scenes. So today's episode is from the March office hours. We sometimes call it the office party, where 100 or so creative professionals from my community come together to gather and to make new business friends. It's a very interactive and really fun session where I set the tone and the topic, and then everyone shares their wins and their struggles, what's working and what's not in their marketing right now. Today's topic was, what's the big deal about email newsletters? Because an email newsletter, also known as content marketing, is one of the most effective marketing tools you can use, and it often leads to newsletter magic. But so many creatives avoid it. Why? That's what I want to know. And more important, how can I help change the way you think about it so that you will do it? Then you can have newsletter magic too, because as I said today, there is no newsletter magic without a newsletter. Makes sense, right? So listen and learn. All right, welcome y'all. This is the March office hours for the S&P and the S&P Plus 26. And remember, we're on the last Thursday of the month. We always use the same Zoom link so you can bookmark it. And I am so glad so many of y'all are here today. It's a gorgeous day here in Savannah. And I have my brand new background, which is my window, which is in my new apartment. So as you'll notice, the refrigerator is gone and the refrigerator magnets, I left them in the alley behind my old place, and they were gone within 5 minutes, I swear to God. But we're moving on, we're growing up. I see some shocked faces, but we're just going to move on. We're going to get over it to something new, because actually, I was just thinking about reframing and how you really have to change the way you think in order to do this marketing thing. Has anyone noticed that it's not the tools themselves or the activities or the actions that are so hard? It is, God dang it, like I got to change the way I think about this stuff. So if you can relate to that, put that in the chat. And if this is your first time, then I want to welcome you to the office hours. This is a safe space. And I want to know, are you ready to make some new business friends? Are you ready to make some new business friends? Because we are going to do some live networking in breakout rooms at the bottom of the hour. All right. I'm a little, Jake is following me. I'm a little all over the place. But let's ask a question first. And this is kind of on the topic, on the theme of today. So if you know you should do a newsletter, but you still can't do it for some reason or haven't done it, tell me why in the chat. Just take a moment. If you are doing it, tell me why, actually. Tell me why you're doing it. What is the thought process? Jake, what do they say?
Got a variety of answers coming in, starting at the top with Steve saying, too lazy. Karen says, time. And Allison, don't know what to say. It is so much work. Dawn Burke says, not sure how to. Don't know what to say. So content issues coming in. Karen says, I don't feel like I'm there just yet, but I know I need it. John's not sure, hasn't considered it. Making the time to do it seems to be a pretty common response here. But a lot of interest, not doing it yet. Know I need it, but not sure where to start. Not sure what the content should be. No time. Those are really the temp polls we're dealing with here, Elise.
All right. And we're going to take a poll momentarily, but I just want to give you a little overview of what we're doing today. So as usual, I'm going to share some big ideas, and it's all about newsletters today. And the big idea comes from the 100 plus planning calls that I've been doing with all the new members of the S&P Plus this past month. I am almost done, but I've talked to almost everyone so far. And I've been watching the replays of the first pod meetings, which started this week. There are more starting next week and more the week after. So if yours hasn't started yet, if you're a member of the S&P Plus, then sit tight. But all of this input, because I am basically someone who responds to what I get. I am like inherently listening to the market. And it got me thinking. And my big question, and you can answer this in the chat if you want, is what is the big deal about a newsletter? What is the big deal about doing a newsletter? Because everyone, not everyone, a lot of people, the majority seem to have trouble with it. And that's what I want to try to address today. So that's my big ideas. And I will do a little how to, because I know part of it is just not knowing exactly how to. We're going to do networking breakouts, as I said, in threes, mostly for 15 minutes at the bottom of the hour. And then we're going to come back and I'll open the floor and you can talk, you can ask questions, you can share aha moments. But as always, we're going to start with wins so far. As I always say, no win too small. And also, if you haven't noticed, in the Slack channel, we have a new wins channel because there were so many wins already that I realized we just needed a place for all the wins. So I just wanted to share one that came from one of our S&P Plus coaches, actually, because they are doing this right along with you. But from Tara Garrigan, she wrote on, I think this was Saturday or Sunday, she said, I went to a water conservation and native plants sale. She lives here in Savannah for fun today and also hoped to reconnect with a friend/client. I had done several projects with her past organization, and now that she's the new director at this botanical garden, she did actually have a number of projects in mind for me and my team and the funding. Looks like more fun combos of teaching about wildlife and connecting with a young audience are coming soon. One of Tara's specialties is murals. And the reason I like this win is because it shows that networking works, number one, being in person, if possible, with your people. And it doesn't have to be a formal event. This was a native plant sale that I actually almost went to also, but then I think I decided to go out to lunch instead and have shrimp and grits. That's what I did. So anyway, that's one of the wins from the Slack wins channel. But Jake, give us a couple more before I jump into the content.
For sure. And we had a lot come in right at the very beginning. Debbie, starting off with a prospect I've been talking to since last summer, hired me to do a small project. Lou says, I got a thoughtful response from a comment I made, which was pretty cool. We're seeing more of the results come in from the vigilant commenting that people are doing on LinkedIn. Evelyn has one. Another win, just scheduled a Zoom call with a prospective client to market Med Spa. Lindy is up to 125 LinkedIn newsletter subscribers after moving away from Substack in January. Still not moving away, sorry. Still posting in Substack, but the same content. So 125 newsletter subscribers, definitely a win. Yeah. Tori, he's gotten started on doing the marketing each day this week. That's absolutely a win. And I'll share this one from Aaron. My main win has been recognizing how I feel when I slip into the imposter syndrome, feeling the feelings, letting them go, and pressing forward once I'm balanced again. The cycle is starting to break.
That's awesome, Aaron. That counts big time because, as I said before, it's about changing the way you think and then the actions that flow from the thought process. And sometimes the thoughts are totally unconscious. You don't even know you're having them. That's part of the biggest part of the problem, truthfully. So with that said, thank you everyone for sharing those wins. I will read the rest of them later, of course. And reactions are welcome. Whatever kind of reactions, hearts, rockets, aerial tramways, anything you can think of. All right, so let's do this poll because I do want to collect a little data, Jake. So the poll is, have you sent a newsletter this year? And the options, you have 4 options and you can put in the chat any comments. Yes, I sent my very first one. Yes, I sent a new edition of mine. That's for people who had already had one. Yes, I am working on it, but haven't sent one yet this year. Or ugh, I'm resisting it. So interesting. 4% said yes, I sent my very first one. 23% said yes, I sent a new edition of mine. So that, the statistics people, they just add them together sometimes and say, look at that. 27% said yes. And then 39% said, I'm working on it. Okay, so that's good. I hope you're going to hit send soon. And I'm resisting 33%, which is what I expected, truthfully. So almost more than 70% are not doing it yet, but they're working on it or resisting it. And 27% said yes. That's interesting. Good. All right. Let's stop sharing. That's good information, I think, for all of us. Again, my question, and if you want to answer it in the chat, feel free. But the question I was asking myself after talking and listening to all of these people is, what is the big deal about doing a newsletter? Because it really does seem to be like a big deal for some reason. And I feel like my mission is to help you overcome that or change the way you think about it so it's not a big deal. It needs to not be a big deal. And I do want to focus on the positive, not the negative. So I'm not going to try to respond or debunk your myths about it. You're going to have to come to it yourself through the actual experience of doing it. And one of the positive aspects of doing a newsletter is what I call newsletter magic. And I know a lot of people have heard me talk about newsletter magic. But I want to ask you, okay, I'll tell you what it is, and then I'm going to ask you, how do you get newsletter magic? And newsletter magic is when you send out your newsletter and someone responds, feels like out of the blue, and they say, oh, I've been meaning to reach out to you, or, oh, so good to hear from you. Your timing is perfect. I have a project for you. Let's talk. That's what newsletter magic is. So if I asked you, how do you get newsletter magic? What would you say?
Deborah, that's a great answer. Just sending a newsletter, consistently sending. Wendy says, channel Nike and just do it. Actually, doing it seems to be a theme here. Just send a regular newsletter. Consistency. Aaron also includes quality content. Judith says, by sending the newsletter and adding some kind of value. Amy, sending it and being consistent with a good piece, including info that solves problems, connecting. What say you, Elise?
I say there is no newsletter magic without a newsletter. It is as simple as that. There is no newsletter magic without a newsletter. I have a feeling that's going to be the next Marketing Works when you do it. I hope. Let's see if it sticks. I never know. You will tell me what sticks, but there really is no newsletter magic without a newsletter. And it is as simple as that. All those other things make sense, but you still do have to send something out, and then you get newsletter magic. And, again, this issue of like, what's the big deal? I think one of the big problems with the newsletter is the word newsletter. The word newsletter has a long history, carries a lot of baggage. People have all sorts of associations to it that feel daunting. That's what I hear. And so I do think that we need a new name for it. And I tried to reframe it as a micro newsletter. But in my conversations with people, I see that doesn't really help. They still feel daunted by the idea of a newsletter. So then I think, no, it's the word newsletter that is a problem. So I said to myself, Elise, what would Ann Handley say? Ann Handley is the author of Everybody Writes. And she has been a guest on my podcast a couple times. And last week, I re-released one of the most popular episodes, which we'll share the link at the end if you want to listen to it. But one of the most popular episodes of my podcast is one with Ann Handley, and I think it's called How to Write a Ridiculously Good Email Newsletter. And then I actually asked Gemini, what would Ann Handley say about this problem? But the real answer is actually what she said to me once. Actually, I heard her speak and she said this, and then I got so jealous that I hadn't said it first. And that thing is that email newsletters are not about the news, it's about the letter. It's not about the news, it's about the letter. Meaning, a lot of people struggle because you feel like, what am I going to say, right? That's one of the things we heard. What am I going to say? Or why would anyone listen to me? But what if, this is my challenge to you, could you reframe the idea of a newsletter as a letter, maybe even a love letter that you send to your very best prospect on your list? What would you want to say to that person on a regular basis so that when they're in their moment of need, they will think of you and respond? And that's when you get newsletter magic. Could you do that? That's my question. Could you do that? Could you rethink about it a different way?
Yeah, Linda appreciates the reframe. Sarah says, I wonder what Bob Blybot would think.
Good question. You can ask him.
An interesting reframe, a great idea. Wendy says it's a great idea and it took the pressure off already. So
I hope
I
so,
mean, taking the pressure off in any context, I think, is always a good thing to get people going. Because, like you said, the magic can't come without the newsletter itself. So
okay. And so, one of the psychological tricks people play is you get someone to say, yes, I can do that. And then they feel much more positive about actually doing it. So my question is, can you do that? Can you reframe it so that you actually do a newsletter? Who is the letter to? I saw that. It's to your very best prospect. Think of a real person, right? Who do you want to help? Who do you want to work with? Write a letter to that person. All right. Just a way to think about it. But now I want to get a little bit more practical. I'm going to do a little how to create a LinkedIn newsletter, a newsletter on LinkedIn, because I am advising almost everyone to do their first one on LinkedIn. I know all the reasons why it's better to have it on MailChimp or your own list, blah, blah, blah. That's fine, but it's much more complicated. And I would say do a starter newsletter or even keep it on LinkedIn because it's much, much easier. And when you send the first one out, everyone in your network is invited to subscribe. So getting the people on your list is also that much easier. So the way to create a LinkedIn newsletter is not on your profile. You might think it would be intuitive that you would go to your profile and create it there, but LinkedIn is not all that intuitive. So that's not how it works. You basically go to your feed and you see here where it says start a post, and you don't click there. You click write article because LinkedIn, for some reason, thinks a newsletter is a kind of article, which it kind of is, but not really. But anyway, that's where it is, write article. So then you click write article and you get this page to write an article. And then you go here under manage and you do create newsletter. And then when you do create newsletter, it's going to ask you what's the title of your newsletter. It's going to ask you how frequently you want. So you need to make some decisions about that, but that's something that you can be thinking about. And then it gives you this page basically to write. You can upload an image as the banner. You can type a headline here. And I'm going to ask Jake, are there any questions or issues?
is all of this for a LinkedIn newsletter or email or either?
Well, the how-to is just for a LinkedIn newsletter, but the content idea and the simplicity in any of those examples I just showed could be done in any format, in any software.
Is creating the newsletter available as a free user of LinkedIn? Do you have to pay?
Absolutely. No. And it used to be you had to be in creator mode, but they got rid of creator mode a couple of years ago. So it's not an issue anymore. Anyone can do it. Anyone should do it. Everyone should do it.
How would you differentiate what you write for a newsletter versus a blog? I know you need to define specifically what you'll be talking about so it's more focused. Is there anything else?
No, actually, I mean, I often, and this is kind of the answer to the other question before, why a newsletter? The content is essentially the same. It's the delivery mode that is different. And the reason a newsletter is better is because it goes directly into the inbox of your recipients. The blog doesn't. They have to go get it. They have to find it. The Google has to find it, right? The newsletter, even the LinkedIn newsletter, gets emailed into the inbox of your people, your subscribers. That's why we care about it. It's like having a direct conversation and then they can reply and you've got a conversation going. That's what we want. Conversations going.
And I see Marty's question. Elise, when would you use a newsletter versus an article? So an article would be something, you could tell me if I'm wrong, that you would just post at any time. And a newsletter is a series of things that not everybody, but most of the time is posted on a regularly scheduled basis, right?
Yes, but I mean, really the only difference is the way it gets sent. The article
Right.
stays on your profile, the newsletter gets sent via email. So again, no difference in terms of content.
Anybody else have any questions? Carrie, speak to us.
To share, I hope this is okay with my networking mate, Annette and Susan. They have kind of two different routes of what they're interested in, what their expertise is in. And the question came out about, do I do two different newsletters? How do I put out what I want to say, but not lose people, but also be relevant for the people who are interested in, a certain topic? So is it like, can you do a second profile on LinkedIn?
Let me answer that quickly. Thank you for Carrie for bringing that up. First of all, you can't have two profiles. That's kind of illegal in LinkedIn world, but you can create a company page off of your personal profile, and you can use that one for a different endeavor. I would use your personal profile for the one that is most important to you, the one maybe that you're making money on, because LinkedIn prioritizes personal profiles. The company pages are not nearly as effective, but it can be used kind of as a mini website for something else if you want. And then in terms of the newsletter, you could either alternate issues and the focus of the topic on each issue. I really don't recommend doing more than one newsletter because if you're having trouble doing one, two is going to be impossible. So I would start with one. Maybe you, in one, prioritize the thing you're really most interested in, or again, the one that is going to make the money, and then deprioritize, but have a little separate section for the one that is about something else. And sometimes it depends on how related they are. If they're totally unrelated, like children's books and healthcare, kind of, unless you can make the connection, then I would just be careful with trying to do two things at once. This is all about focus. And in general, I like to say, get one ball in the air first, and then you can add another ball later. But don't try to do more than one thing at a time. Didn't that sound like fun? It really was. I just love these sessions. I hope it was also inspiring for you, even if you weren't there live. At the end, I always ask for feedback, and here's what they said today. Super practical and helpful, and I enjoyed the networking. And it helped me remove some of the barriers I've been self-erecting to start a micro newsletter. And one member of the SMP Plus program even said, "You're changing my whole life, a ripple effect." So something is working. I do hope you learned a little something. And if you want your own invitation to the next office hours or office party, just go to marketing-mentor.com and click on the shop. That's where you'll find the simplest marketing plan. And if you want my help figuring all of this out, take advantage of my free mentoring session. You can find that and lots more resources, including my quick tips. That's my email newsletter. So enjoy, and I'll see you next time.